Hey everyone, Cubas here. Women were not historically oppressed. Now, we've all heard it before, right? That women were historically oppressed, that they were simply tools for men to use, that they were viewed as property, and so on and on. That somehow we just lived in the culture in the West, that women were just getting raped left and right, and that they were always viewed as inferior to men, not only socially, but they were viewed inferior to men ontologically. Now, whether one is left or right wing, it seems as if this narrative has been widely accepted. There are many people on the right, for example, that believe that the first wave of feminism was progress, that it was actually good for society to begin to adopt much of these ideas. However, this narrative that the feminists bring to us really does not hold up to basic historical scrutiny. Historically speaking, one can make the case that women actually lived a very privileged life. For example, Aristotle accounts how Spartan women lived of every intemperance and luxury, and socially and politically dominated the city-state. In Athens, women's health was of primary concern, especially that of over men's. And it was viewed that in their more comfortable life that they lived at home, they stayed away from harsh elements and from hard work that can actually potentially kill them young. Throughout medieval times, most academies were ran by women. There are many abbeys founded by women. A famous one is the Abbey of Eibingen, that was founded by Saint Hildegard of von Bingen. In 1165, she founded this abbey and was the head of the academy. She was also a very famous composer and was considered a polymath, which essentially means that she knows a lot about various topics. She also was the founder of the scientific natural history in Germany. And although she's unique in her multifaceted skill level and the fact that she was a doctor of the church, there were many women that founded abbeys and many women that educated a multitude of young men and women. Of course, there were other doctors of the church, such as St. Catherine of Siena in the 1300s and St. Teresa of Avila in the 1500s. There was Joan of Arc, who led the French army to victory in Orleans. In the 10th century, it was actually a female named Hrothvita who brought back comedy and dramas to the West. As we all know, after the fall of Rome, there was a lot of wars, there was a lot of battles, in which was finally ended with Charlemagne and began to unite much of Europe. And during this time, we saw a revival of comedies and dramas that was led by a woman. Marjorie Kemp created the first autobiography in English in the 1400s. And there were countless of queens, duchesses, noblewomen who ruled over land throughout the medieval period. We could go on and on about all these influential women that really made an impact in civilization. But the one thing that we have to recognize is that the idea that women were simply oppressed through the entirety of Western history until the 1920s just does not hold up to scrutiny. None of these women would have ever had any kind of power. None of these women would have had any kind of influence in society if that were true. So what about the views of how many philosophers and thinkers talked about women? Famously, Aristotle was known for saying that women were defective and misbegotten, and that Aquinas concurred with these ideas. But what was meant by that, really? Many quote Aquinas in question 92 of the first part of the Summa Theologiae when he says, as regards to individual nature, woman is defective and misbegotten. For the active force in the male seed tends to the production of a perfect likeness in the masculine sex, while the production of the woman comes from defect in the active force or some of the material indisposition, or some external influence such as south wind, which is moist, as the philosopher observes. Many people use this quote to point out that maybe Aquinas also believed that women were inferior to men. But many fail to read the sentence that precedes this quote. Aquinas further says, on the other hand, As regards to human nature in general, woman is not misbegotten, but is included in the nature's intention as directed to the work of generation. Now, in the first part, he is talking about both the material and efficient causation of woman. Now, obviously, through further biological and scientific research, we have discovered that south winds or moistness does not actually determine sex, but that was the going theory during the medieval and ancient times. And what Aquinas is actually saying is that even if you were to find any kind of material or efficient cause that shows women to be defective, they are not defective in their nature of being human. The man and woman are equal in their humanity. This is the idea that was going on for most of the medieval period. Not that women were inferior, maybe that women lacked the ability for reason, which I think has been proven over and over again throughout history, but never to say that all women don't. Obviously, there's Catherine of Siena, who was an intelligent person, or Saint Hildegard, who already said was known to be a polymath. Now, the feminists constructed false historical narratives in order to justify their movement. If they were to convince enough people that throughout history women were simply oppressed, then they could convince them that they need to be liberated by erasing the lines and the distinctions between feminine and male roles. Historically, the truth is that there was major class distinctions during the medieval period. That it was very difficult for somebody in the peasant class to become a nobleman or a noble woman. A major way that many became noble women were through marriage. And if a father saw that his daughter was beautiful and caught the eye of a nobleman, a duke or a king or whoever, they would push them to marry them. This was a way for them and their family to get further in life. Now, that's not justifying that behavior. It's not saying that that behavior was good, but it is to say that it wasn't about their womanhood. It wasn't about them degrading women to mere property, but it was a means to an end. The problem with peasant men is that they had no real social value. The peasant woman, at least if she was beautiful, had physical advantages over other women. They also had the ability to bear children. And so many times, a peasant woman was able to become a noblewoman by marrying a nobleman or becoming the mistress, which also granted them land and property. The peasant man is valueless. What does he have to offer? It was much more likely for a noble man to marry a peasant woman or have her as a mistress than it was a noble woman to marry a peasant man. And so the advantage again went to the woman, even in their peasant life. So the idea that women were simply universally oppressed throughout history, it's just a bogus one. So we must reject this feminist narrative and really reject all waves of feminism altogether. As Milo Yiannopoulos said many years ago, feminism is cancer. And he was correct. There has been no feminist movement that was actually based on truth. It was all based on falsehood from the very beginning. Not only the historical falsehood, but also the ontological falsehoods, to say that there are no real distinctions between men and women. This cancerous idea has infected our culture. And we must begin to completely deny and abolish all that feminism has brought to us. That's the show for today. Thank you. Good day.